This is the second Vine Tree vlog featuring Ross Tiffin, in which he takes an alternative look at our digital world. This time around, Ross is joined by his son Jamie, who is an experienced IT professional. Today they're talking about how age and social drivers influence our view of technology, plus the growth of data and its implications.
If you think about it, there's always been an issue, isn't there? Even when you were young, I had to rely on you to program the video recorder because I couldn't do it. Well, I could do it, but I didn't actually get the result I was looking for. I'd record the wrong program on the wrong day. And if I think about that, nothing much has changed. You've always been able to do that. So there was something intuitive about your approach that I didn't have. Mine was learned behavior. Yours was much more intuitive. So there is a barrier, an invisible barrier, that some members of my age group have got. Whether that's contrived or whether it's genuine, I'm not really sure. But you guys don't really have that.
No, agreed. I think we grew up with it without question, and that's a simple way of explaining it.
So it's likely that the perceptions of technology do differ between generations. But do social drivers also have an impact upon the uptake of technology?
What's interesting to me is that technology has driven social change in a kind of insidious way. If you know, we've not noticed it in big steps. It's just gradually happened. But you must have seen that. I mean, living in a village, you must have seen social change more than I do. You
could take it down to almost a post office level, where suddenly the post office, which was a dying breed really in villages, is now going through the roof, where people are buying online and they're selling online and they're moving things around rapidly at a rate of knots via eBay or buying through Amazon. So suddenly the post office has become another central hub where it may have been drifting away. So the world has changed, you're absolutely right, and it is interesting to see socially how the fact that has all moved in each direction.
Talking about a specific new technology like AI, which is now rapidly becoming mainstream, what are its implications? We're clearly gaining data immediacy, but are we, as a result, diminishing social interaction?
I think one of the things that I find fascinating, if you take that kind of idea about Amazon changing the whole direction of its business and what it encompasses, and Amazon's plan to have kind of robotic delivery, so that, you know, drones and all kinds of other, it's all fascinating. It's science fiction for me, but actually it's very near fulfillment. It's very close. This kind of move towards artificial intelligence is something that my generation finds fascinating but a bit scary. I'm not really sure how others find that, but it's been a gradual thing, isn't it? We've had intelligent toasters for a long time. You've got intelligent washing machines. You've got, you know, driverless cars. So the whole business of AI has just exploded in what seems to me a fairly recent period. All of that is worrying for me because we seem to be moving away from kind of individual one-on-one relationships, which you could describe a little as qualitative, where you can get a sense of how somebody's interacting with you by their body language or whatever, and we just adjust the way in which we talk to one another because I perceive that you're not liking that conversation, or I perceive you are liking it, and I change it. When it becomes arm's length and more quantitative in that sense, and artificial intelligence at the moment seems to me to be very arm's length, as is all of this kind of brand engagement and online stuff, I wonder what we lose from that.
It's a good question. It is a good question. Like you say, relationships are built on trust and experience and working with people. I think what we lose is that face-to-face piece, but what we probably gain is a more detailed insight about people. People very rarely show you exactly how they feel all the time, whereas I suspect a large amount of the data that's collected around people's movements and what they do and what they buy in their own personal space is back to that social change to some extent. I think that's it's becoming quite telling, and I think that's where the businesses are starting to look at now and saying, why are we not making more use of where people have been and where they've gone, hit it on their digital profile as well as actually in real life?
I see other issues there. If you've got masses and masses and masses of data, that must incur for companies masses and masses of cost.
Correct.
And the more data we've got, the more processing of data involved. Will we get to the stage by which this will be self-limiting because the cost will overtake the benefit?
I think the industry has effectively a race to zero view, that the cost of holding data becomes limitless, I guess, or effectively doesn't involve any significant cost to the people. But that's driven by other reasons around that and what's happening with that data and how it's being used elsewhere. I think you're right. If we look at things like the Internet of Things, the idea being that every device is connected, the data ramifications are vast, so much greater than anything we've seen as yet.
It seems to me that as companies gather and store vast amounts of data on individuals, on our lives in every aspect, you wonder where the line is, the ethical line on how that data is to be used. I don't know where you go with that, particularly as technology is driving really interesting and potentially invasive data collection.
So, and there are a number of brands out there, like you say, that we've never really even heard of before, businesses out there that are doing this now. So you're absolutely right. Who owns that data and who controls it and whose data is it?
The rapid introduction of new technology, combined with the differing perceptions and social drivers, represents a real challenge. So how should businesses respond?
I guess speed is the key to that, isn't it? It's about how they can act more quickly than they have done in the past. And we talked about infrastructure and putting in large blocks of infrastructure that were immovable to some extent within a business for 5+ years. And that can't exist anymore. If you look at something like Hilton, and against Airbnb have got more rooms than Hilton ever even considered being available. And a brand that's come out of nowhere. You don't even know where your competition's coming from. I guess that's the other side of this. Uber came from nowhere and has changed that market. Speed and agility, they term in my industry, is key. And how do you act and tailor your focus and your business to what the consumers and other businesses are looking for?
I used to think that I was perhaps unusual because I've had a number of careers. But I think the reality of modern life is that everybody has to be like Madonna and reinvent themselves every now and then. And that's certainly the case with companies, with industry, isn't it? So we recognise that things can be changed, but there doesn't seem to be a plan for an overall integration of that. One way or another, we're going to require our governments to take a more umbrella view of how we're going to deal with that. So we have to have a situation where big industry, big data, big government comes together. If we don't do that, there's no way of controlling that, and we'll have a small number of winners and a very large number of losers, and that socially is not tolerable.